Okay folks, in this lecture I'm going to show you how to freeze panes in Microsoft Excel. Now for those of you who don't know what the term freeze panes means, basically it enables you to freeze the top row, in other words make it static so that it doesn't go off your screen view, or likewise freeze a column so that it doesn't go off your screen view. Now you might be thinking, okay, what does this look like when you actually do it? Well, to do that I've just got a quick example where we've got some sample data of UK libraries, and we're just going to navigate the actual data set, and then I'll show you why freezing panes is actually so handy. Okay, so we've got our table here, and we've got a couple of fields which basically give us information about UK libraries. So for example, this field here is title, and it gives us the name of the library. This one is street address. It gives us the street address. Now, let's scroll down. Now, as you can see, we've got a lot of data here. And just to give you an idea, if I go all the way down, we've got about 4,039 records. Now, this is great, but if you notice one thing, folks, when we scroll past our actual titles for each column, you can see that it becomes very hard to suddenly identify which field means which. Now, of course, we could figure out this one, for example, is title. But what about this one and that one? You know, they're both got numbers in their columns, but it's very hard to actually remember exactly what these two columns represent. Okay, so this is where freezing panes comes in. What you can do, if you head on over to the view part of the ribbon, now under this section here, window, you've got freeze panes. If you click on it, you'll have three options. So going from the bottom one, we've got freeze first column, freeze top row, and then freeze panes. And basically what this means, this one, is if you click here, you'll see this little grey line has appeared. And what this signifies is that this column A is now frozen. So if I go to the right hand side now, you can see that column A doesn't move off our screen. So this option is handy, for example, folks, when you've got in your first column of your table some really useful information. So in this case, we've got ID, which could come in handy if you were analyzing this data set. Okay, now the next option we've got is freeze top row. Now, folks, this is probably one of my favorite things about Microsoft Excel, this freeze top row feature. Basically, if I click here, this deactivates my frozen first column, and the top row is now frozen. And what this means is that if I scroll down, you can see that our titles don't go off the screen now, which means we can easily identify each field regardless of how further down we go on the data set, because the names are displayed at the top. So that is freezing panes, the benefits of it. Now you might be asking, we can freeze a column, we can freeze a top row. But as you saw when we froze the top row, the frozen column deactivated itself. Now, is there a way where we can freeze both? And there is. So the first thing we need to do is unfreeze the top row. Now we do this by just simply clicking back, and if you have something frozen, whether it's top row or first column, the unfreeze panes option will show up. So we just click here, and as you can see, the grey line has disappeared. And just to show you, if I scroll off, you can see that our top row is no longer frozen. Okay, so to freeze a top row and column, what you need to do is basically click, and when you select the option to freeze the pane, it will freeze whatever is to the top left hand side of your cell selection. So in this case, if I click here, Excel will freeze this column and this row. So let's try it out. There. And as you can see, this grey line has appeared down here, as well as here, almost like an intersection. So now, if I scroll down, you can see that our top row is there, frozen. And if I scroll to the right hand side, you can see that column A is frozen. So that's how you freeze both the column and the row at the same time. Okay, now I'm just going to unfreeze that, and we'll do another example. Let's say we wanted to freeze the top row again, but instead of just column A, we wanted to do these four columns here. So what you would do is basically click here. Now remember, it goes to the top left hand side. the freezing. So if we click here, when we select the option to freeze the panes, Excel will freeze everything above and everything to the left-hand side. So if I click here, you can see we've got our grayed lines appearing. Now, just scrolling down, you can see that our top row is frozen. And if I scroll to the right-hand side, you can see that columns A to D have been frozen as well. Okay, so I'm going to unfreeze that. Now, let's say we wanted to freeze rows 1 to 10. In addition to columns A to D. How would we do that? Well, what we do is basically click here and then activate the freeze panes option. And what that will do is it will freeze everything above and then everything to the left. There. Now if I scroll down, you can see rows 1 to 10 are frozen. If I scroll to the right hand side, you can see columns A to D are frozen. Okay, so that's how you freeze panes, or rather fix columns and rows in Microsoft Excel. Now the benefits of this is that it enables you to scroll through your data much more easier. And folks, when you save your worksheet and reopen it later on, the freezing pane still gets carried through. So that's another benefit as well. Okay, so that concludes this lecture. Thank you for listening and watching. If there are any questions or queries, please feel free to reach out, and I will see you in the next lecture.